Hi there, it's Denise Eckert, and I love coming on here and sharing different techniques and ideas to help you lower the stress in your life and create a happier lifestyle. And today I've got Yvonne Caputo, and she has been a teacher. She taught in the area of Pennsylvania public schools for 18 years. She has also been the vice president of human resources at a retirement community, a corporate trainer and consultant, and a psychotherapist. She has a master's degree in education and clinical psychology. Her book, Flying with Dad, is a story about her relationship with her father through his telling of World War II stories. Her second book, Dying with Dad, shares how she and her dad had tough conversations about what he wanted in the end. She's always been a storyteller, and she's used stories to widen students' eyes and soften clients' pain. And her stories have earned her rave reviews as a presenter and a speaker. So she lives in Pennsylvania with her best friend, who's also her husband, and together they have 3 children, 3 grandchildren, and a Bernie doodle. So welcome, Yvonne.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yes, so we're going to talk about the negative side of emotions. Now, what inspired you to do this type of work?
When I was teaching, I took a number of children to England for a 2-week exchange visit. And our first week, we were in a youth hostel, so I had the kids 24/7. And they started to fall apart. And I was clueless. What do I do to help these kids? So when I got back to the States, I went and got a second master's degree in clinical psych. I wanted to have that background in it so that when I was teaching, I had a set of skills that I might not have had otherwise.
That's interesting. So now, how do we deal with negative emotions? Or what is a negative emotion? Let's start from the beginning.
It's easier for me to say anger, frustration, anxiety, disappointment. There's a raft of negative emotions. And my perspective on them is we need to treat them like our best friends, and we need to treat them like a stop sign. And I'll use the latter as an example. Can I ask you what you do when you're driving a car and you get to a stop sign?
You stop.
Okay, and what do you do next?
You look around and see what's going on, and then go forward.
Okay, and I see negative emotions in that same vein. So if I'm angry, I'm going to stop. And I'm going to say to myself, what's the matter? Why am I angry? And then think that through and then decide what I want to do with that anger according to my values and according to my morals. And I use that stop sign metaphor because that's what the negative emotion is there for, there in the first place. All right. It's what I would call an internal stop sign. If we feel good, all right, we're not necessarily going to take the pause. But if we're feeling something negative, hopefully we will. The other thing about this is that the way that emotions work, there's a place in the brain called the amygdala, and it fires. Okay. And fight, flight, freeze, or play dead are the normal reactions. And that's a good thing. Because if I go out to my driveway and an 18-wheeler is careening down the road, I'm going to flee. I'm going to get out of the way. Anger or frustration is really meant to be the same kind of thing. And instead of freezing or playing dead or fighting back, when we name the feeling, when we ask ourselves, why am I feeling this? What is this saying to me? What we're doing is we're engaging the front part of our brain, the cerebral cortex. And so instead of just lashing out, we give ourselves time to think through whatever the negative emotion is. So the other side of what I said earlier is that's what a good friend would do. My good friend is going to say to me, Yvonne, do you really want to do that? Are you sure that's the way you want to handle this? So we're given negative emotions to do that very thing. I hope that makes sense.
It does. Can you give us an example? Walk us through something like that.
Okay, so anger is such an easy one to talk
Yeah.
about. Yeah. Okay, so I get a flash, and for me, I feel it in my chest. My chest tightens up. Okay, Yvonne, what just happened and what makes you angry? The person I was talking to wasn't listening to me. All right, so I'm saying to myself, why? What's going on? And when I think about rather, the person that I'm talking to isn't listening to me, I can decide, what do I want to do about it? All right, is this person important to me? Is what I'm saying important? Is it something that I need to deal with, or this is a mountain that I don't want to die on? So going through those steps, it's like me getting to the stop sign, looking all around me to decide, do I really want to go through that interchange without looking? The flash of anger, feeling it in my chest. What I don't want to do is lash out. That's not the person that I am. Is it okay for me to be angry? Absolutely. Another way I might think about this is anger wasn't listened to. This is something I need to deal with. This is something that's really important. I need whoever that person is to know what's on my head. Do I want to do it right now? Maybe yes, maybe no. If not right now, all right, then when? If this is so important, I want to think about this. I want to find a time. Maybe what I want to do is I want to write out what I'm going to say. I'm going to look for an opportunity where I can address the issue rather than just blindly go into it and get kicked back. And then I'm really not being heard. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Now, when you're walking yourself through it, are there any tools that we can use to do that? It almost sounds like you've got some journal prompts there or something like that. Is there a series of questions that we can do?
First of all, instead of a question, name the emotion.
Hmm.
I'm angry. I'm frustrated. I'm anxious. I'll use anxiety. When I do podcasts, I get anxious. So, what makes me anxious? All right. Am I going to hit the right button? Is the technology going to work? How can I prepare for this so that it goes hopefully as smoothly as possible? So today, I had your email with the Zoom link up on my computer 2 hours ago. And then I made sure that I was looking at it 15 minutes before the time. Okay. And then I waited for that to be closer to the time we were scheduled to click on the link. Feeling it, naming it, taking steps. What do I do first? What do I do second? What do I do third? And you can do that with any negative emotion.
Hmm. Okay. Now, how does our brain work when we're under stress?
I'll try and explain it as I know it. But as I understand it, our senses are where everything starts. Hearing, smelling, seeing, feeling, touch, any sense is going to. I'm thinking about a nice kind of one that will help me to explain it. I was in the mall and I was walking through the mall, and this really sweet odor hit me and it made me smile. All right. In this sense, it was my senses were picking up something pleasant. And I then stopped and thought, where have I experienced this before? Where's this coming from? It reminds me of something. And it took a little bit of time to just stand there and think it through. And the answer was Sister Rose Batista. Sister Rose Batista, it must have been her hand cream or her face soap or something that she used. And even though it had been a long time since I was in 5th grade, that smell triggered my amygdala. And the amygdala is the little part in the middle of your brain that is the one that's going to say, I feel something, or there's a feeling here. That's basically how it works. Like I said to you about going out to the road. My sense of looking, of seeing that 18-wheeler come toward me, my amygdala fires, boom, danger. And so that's how it works in the brain. Now, it's much more complicated than that. There are neurotransmitters involved, there are pathways involved, there are other parts of the brain involved. But basically, that's it. And because you asked the question, what I'd like people to know is it's just normal. It's how we function. I'll give another example. My father was a World War II vet. He was a navigator on B-24s. 50 years after the fact, he and a buddy are going to a museum where there's a B-24 there. He goes right to that plane, and it was big for its day. He walks all along the fuselage. He goes around the tail. Parked right next to it is a Messerschmitt. Now, this is a German jet. My dad lost consciousness and fell to the floor. Fight, flight, freeze, or play dead. He both froze and he played dead. When he and I were talking about the incident, I said to him, I said, Dad, tell me about the Messerschmitt. He said, oh, honey, it was so fast. Our gunners couldn't trail it. And it was nimble. It was above us. It was below us. We were sitting ducks. And what I said to Dad was, after he explained that to me, I said, your brain remembered that very thing. His sense of sight, seeing the German jet, took him back 50 years to being in that plane and experiencing the terror of having that German jet come after them. And he automatically played dead.
Yeah, it's so powerful. Now, you've written 2 books. Would you like to speak about your books a little bit? Because you are the storyteller.
Okay, I am the storyteller.
You are the storyteller.
I never thought of myself as a writer until my dad opened up one night on the phone with this quirky, funny, off-the-wall story of all things, making an emergency landing in freed Belgium toward the end of the war. Their 3rd engine was out, and that's the engine with hydraulics. So that he would tell a quirky, funny story was just, where'd that come from? So I said to him, I said, hey, Dad, let me take notes. What the hell do you want to do that for? I said, this is just really good. This is something maybe the family would like to have. The next phone call, I said, if you're willing, start at the beginning. And he did. And somewhere along the line, I said, I've got something here. So I kept interviewing him, kept writing them down, and it took 11 years. But that's the source of the first book. More than just getting Dad's story, it was the bridge that helped me to build the relationship with my father that I always wanted. He was greatest generation. There was a roof over our head and food on the table, and he was right down the hall. Talk to me about important, soft, emotional things. He didn't do that. And that's the kind of relationship I wanted with him. The end result was that's the kind of relationship that I got through the book. So it's a 2-part story. Dad's story, yes, but how listening to those stories helped me to transform my relationship with him. The second book is called Dying with Dad. And that one is basically comes from the readers of the first. because I started getting messages. I was with Dad when he died. How could you let him go? Where did you find the courage? And basically, as a part of Dad and I getting close, he and I talked a lot about death and dying. And we made those conversations legal so that I had the power of attorney to make decisions for him if he couldn't make them for himself. And he called me on the phone in 2009 and said, "Can you come home? I'm scared." I drove the next day, and 2.5 hours later, he was gone. But his wish, his stated wish was feet first out of his own home, which meant on a gurney and gone. And so being with him, the EMTs were working on him. And I called the hospital and I said, "There's a do not resuscitate order on Dad's chart. Get it to the emergency room. They're going to bring Dad in." Luckily, the emergency room doctor called the EMTs and said they could stop working on him. So I laid down beside him, told him that I loved him, told him that he was going to be with Mom, which is something that he had been talking about for years. And then I did the glue that was in our family, the Lord's Prayer. And he was gone. So my passion around the second book is for all of us to have those very important conversations with our children and to do a document called an advance directive that outlines what kinds of things that Dad wanted and didn't want. That's how the 2 books came to be.
And there's not a dry eye in the house. But that's wonderful that you were able to not rekindle, like to grow such a relationship with your dad. And I know the generation you're talking about because my parents were the same. And before my mom passed away, I got to know her on a different level. And it's special. It's very different than when, you're growing up and being raised by someone where there were such strict boundaries.
Mhm. Mhm.
Children's supposed to be seen, not heard, and you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that. And it wasn't about feelings. It wasn't about what you wanted or dreams. You were put into the box that I didn't fit in anyways.
Mhm. Yeah. And when listening to Dad's stories, I was able to finally understand the man that I didn't understand. Dad would get angry very easily. Boom, he would just flare. And the more we talked, the more I understood his anger stemmed from post-traumatic stress disorder. And we even talked about that. We talked about his nightmares. We talked about the flashback. So I was able to let him know where those things came from and why they were there. And after the conversation about his nightmare, I said, sarcasm was a fine art in our family. And I said, "So sorry, pal, you're normal." When I got another one, when I said your nightmares were normal, "What the hell do you mean?" That was Dad's comeback. But he didn't have the language that I wanted. He wasn't raised with that kind of language. And then on top of that, he came home from the war and walked around town, and all the other GIs seemed to be fine. So he began to question what was wrong with him. And all of that, besides being from the greatest generation, he didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to approach me or reach me in a way that I wanted to be approached. Like you, isn't it grand when we can establish those kinds of relationships with our parents, even if it's late in the game?
Yeah. Because it's not the daughter-mother relationship, it's a friendship and it's a deeper love. And okay, we're going to be wrapping this up. So Yvonne, what are your final words of wisdom for the audience today?
To actually think of those negative emotions as your best friend, as an internal stop sign that's trying to give you direction to proceed through the intersection safely.
Wonderful. Okay, I'll be putting Yvonne's information wherever you're watching or listening to this. And if you have any questions, please feel free and ask her the questions. And her book links will be there as well. Thank you so much for your time today, Yvonne. It was wonderful. It was great talking about this information and leaving you a gentle reminder to slow down and enjoy life. And I'll see you in the next episode.